The gates just opened, the courts are filling in, and somewhere in the middle of that quiet Sunday buzz sits a number that shouldn't make sense. 9-4. That's how many spots separate two women on the WTA rankings. Alexandra Eala of the Philippines sitting at 29, and Jelena Ostapenko. No, wait, this is Wang Xinyu. Sorry, let's just say it plainly. Alex Eala at world number 29, and Zheng Qinwen of China down at 123. One draw sheet, one first-round match at the Mubadala Citi DC Open, and a gap on paper that looks almost accidental. Now here's where it gets strange. When betting markets opened on this match in the early hours before the first ball was struck, the price on Eala winning sat around 71%. Roughly $15 million had already moved through markets tied to her matches this tournament alone. Translate that into plain terms. The crowd putting real money down was saying there's close to a 3 in 4 chance a 21-year-old from Manila beats a reigning Olympic gold medalist. Sit with that sentence for a second, because if you've followed women's tennis these past few years, it shouldn't be a sentence that's allowed to exist yet. To understand why, you have to hold two completely different stories in your head at once. Eala is riding the best stretch of her career, a run to the second week of Wimbledon that included beating the defending champion on center court. Zheng, meanwhile, sits at 123 for one reason only: a shredded elbow that needed surgery last summer, a year spent rebuilding, 2 majors missed, a withdrawal from this year's Australian Open, and a comeback that only restarted in February. So that's the collision happening on court today. A rising underdog with nothing to lose, and a wounded former finalist trying to remember what winning feels like. And what the market is telling us, bluntly, almost rudely, is that right now, current form beats past glory. Not a little, a lot. Because if you only judge these two by their trophy cases, it isn't close. 1 Olympic gold medal from Paris. 1 Australian Open final. A career-high ranking of world number 4. On paper, the emotional pull says Zheng. But markets don't price emotion. They price the ledger. And this year's ledger tells a different story. Eala with 30 wins against 18 losses, a maiden grass court title, over $1 million earned, and a career-best Wimbledon run. Zheng with 11 wins and 11 losses, no titles, and a first-round Wimbledon exit where she managed just 4 games the entire match. None of this is a knock on Zheng. If anything, she's been remarkably honest about where she stands. Back in February, describing her return to the tour, she said something that cuts right to it. "I don't pray for winning matches. I just prayed for a normal elbow." That's not the voice of someone underestimating her opponent. That's the voice of an athlete still negotiating with her own body before she can even think about negotiating with a scoreboard. So what exactly did the market see? Start with the obvious. The ranking gap alone explains a big chunk of that price. Historically, a top 30 player facing someone ranked in the 120s wins somewhere in the high 60s to low 70s percentage range, depending on surface. The market's number lines up almost exactly with that baseline, before anyone even factored in form. And the form gap is real. Eala walks in having beaten a former Wimbledon finalist in the second round, ground out a third-round win, and pushed a Wimbledon semifinalist to 3 tight sets in the fourth. Zheng walks in with a first-round loss in Rome, a first-round exit at Wimbledon, and a Doha comeback that flashed brilliance. 20 aces, 43 winners in one match, before fading in the next round. Strip the names off those 2 form lines and hand them to any trader blind, and they price it exactly the way the market already has. But let's not pretend Zheng is finished, because that's not the story either. She's an Olympic champion, a former world number 4, and when her body cooperates, one of the biggest ball strikers on tour. That Doha comeback wasn't soft. It was a woman who hadn't played in 5 months walking out and swinging through a Grand Slam champion like nothing happened. The market has all of that information. It's still pricing Eala as the favorite. Then there's the piece of this story that gives it its emotional center. 3 weeks ago, Eala walked onto Wimbledon center court, ranked outside the top 30, and beat the defending champion in a match that ended with a tiebreak and a second set that slowly drained the color from the favorite's face. It was, by any measure, the biggest single win by a Filipino tennis player in the sport's modern era. The WTA's fan vote named her breakout star of the grass swing by a landslide. And the most credible outside voice on her this month didn't come from a coach or a broadcaster. It came from Jasmine Paolini, the Italian who'd go on to beat Eala in 3 sets at Wimbledon's 4th round. Before that match, in her press conference, unprompted, Paolini called her a genuinely dangerous player. Then she went out and proved she meant it by having to fight for the win. That's not flattery. That's a slam finalist telling you, through her own scouting, exactly what she felt across the net. To be fair, though, this isn't a clean story either. These two have played once before, at the 2023 Asian Games, on hard court, when both were teenagers. Zheng won in 3 sets and went on to take gold that same week. Different players now, in almost every way, but it's the only head-to-head data anyone has, and it belongs to Zheng. There's also a bigger picture worth naming. Prediction markets have quietly become part of how tennis gets read, and what they are saying today is a real shift. 20 years ago, an Olympic champion facing a player ranked outside the top 25 would have been priced as the favorite almost automatically, pedigree alone carrying that weight. Not anymore. Recent form now outweighs the trophy case, at least in how the money moves. And underneath all of it sits one honest caveat. Eala hasn't played a competitive match in 3 weeks. Wimbledon's 4th round was July 6th. This first round lands on the 27th. That's a surface change, a long flight, and 0 match sharpness tested in real conditions. The market may not have fully priced that gap. If there's a hidden edge for the underdog today, that's where it's hiding. So what is the market actually saying? Not that Eala is the better player, full stop. Just that right now, on this specific morning, with these 2 specific bodies and these 2 specific seasons, she's more likely to win this one match. A modest claim, but it puts her in a room no Filipino tennis player has ever stood in before, a room where an Olympic gold medalist is priced as the underdog against her, in front of millions of dollars of real money. Win or lose today, that's the company she's keeping now. And whichever way the scoreboard falls, that room doesn't close behind her.